What is the ACT hiding from you? I've spent tens of thousands of hours coaching students on this test over the past few years, and I've compiled the 5 most important secrets that the ACT is not telling you. Most of these secrets took me months, sometimes even years of literally doing nothing except for coaching students on the ACT to figure out. So what I'm going to do today is share these secrets with you so that you don't have to spend months or even years coaching students on the ACT in order to figure these things out. By the end of this video, you'll be able to navigate the planning and testing process without running into the same exact issues that I ran into over and over again, and that many of my students come to me with today. Now, the first secret here is that the ACT is a test of recognition and practice. Everybody struggles with time on the ACT, so they think that they need to just move a little bit faster through each and every question, or they need to pace themselves a little bit better throughout each section of the test, or they think that they're missing out on some little quick trick or some sort of hack that they just don't know, that if they were able to figure out the quick trick or the quick hack, then all of a sudden all of their timing problems would go away. And yes, there are strategies out there that you can use to save time on each section, and there are little quick tricks and quick hacks that can get you to answer questions just a little bit quicker. But at the end of the day, there's only one way to reliably increase your speed on the ACT. And that's by becoming extremely familiar with the types of questions that the ACT asks. The ACT has actually not changed its structure significantly since all the way back in 1989. They're still asking the same exact types of questions that are designed to trick you in the same exact ways that they were 35 years ago. And if you practice enough of these questions, then you'll be able to recognize what they're saying a lot faster than if you're unfamiliar with the question types. For example, if you're on the English section and you see a bunch of answer choices that just have commas in different places spread throughout the phrase, this is a common type of question that you should recognize if you've practiced properly. On these questions, we should immediately know one thing. We're looking for unnecessary phrases and clauses in the sentence, since those things will normally have commas both before and after them. And now, since we know exactly what we're looking for in this question, we don't have to spend a ton of time reading and rereading the sentence over and over again, wondering what the difference between the answer choices is. So even if a student can get this question correct without recognizing the question type immediately, a different student who does immediately recognize that this question was asking about unnecessary phrases and clauses will answer this question much faster, save time, and this student will not end up complaining that the ACT is unfair and doesn't give them enough time. So the takeaway here is that you need to practice a lot. And you need to practice with realistic ACT practice questions, like I always say. This will get you into a position where you can immediately recognize a ton of different question types and save a ton of time while still answering these questions correctly. Now, the second ACT secret here comes from kind of an obvious fact, and this is the fact that all questions count the exact same towards your final score. Again, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, duh, that's obvious. But I guarantee you that this concept will change and should change how you're doing your studying right now. For example, one of my students just recently took a practice math test and missed 22 questions on it. Of these 22 math questions that she missed, 4 of them came at the very end of the test when they were testing the really tough, newer and harder concepts to understand. And naturally, these were the 4 questions that my student wanted to spend the majority of our time together discussing. And this makes perfect sense, because as she was going through the test from start to finish, she felt pretty much fine on all of the questions up until these 4 questions towards the end of the test. That's a feeling that we all want to avoid. And that's why she wanted to spend so much time reviewing and studying for these questions. However, this is not the right approach when you're trying to maximize your time studying for the ACT. There were 18 other questions on the test that were a lot easier than these last 4 because she either misread or misunderstood the question, or she just made a small mistake somewhere along her calculations, and that led to her picking the wrong answer. Now, these mistakes are much easier to correct because we don't have to learn a completely brand new concept that's really difficult. So what do you think we should have spent our time working on? The 4 difficult questions that we could spend a bunch of time on trying to learn, or the 18 easier questions that we could probably spend a little bit of time on and kind of get that, what I call low-hanging fruit for ourselves? Remember, all questions count the exact same. So we should obviously work on fixing the easy mistakes that we can grab 18 extra questions on, than trying to spend a bunch of time learning brand new concepts to maybe get 4 extra questions correct. So when I framed it like this to this student, the right path was pretty much obvious, and she agreed with me that we should spend more time focusing on the 18 questions than the 4 questions. But I can't tell you how many students make this same mistake with their preparation. And it's one that you're probably even making right now if you're not conscious of your study time. So the takeaway from this secret is to really focus on where you can make the most score improvement in the least amount of time, instead of just focusing on the handful of questions that made you feel really uncomfortable as you were taking that practice test. Now, secret number 3 is a big one here on the reading section. When you're deciding between 2 different answer choices, you need to stop trying to argue for why an answer choice is correct. This is exactly the trap that the ACT wants you to fall into. And it's the biggest reason that I see students missing questions on the reading section. Unlike your high school English class, where you're probably used to picking or being assigned a thesis and then defend that thesis in a paper, the ACT reading section requires you to argue against an answer choice rather than for it and eliminate each of the incorrect answer choices. You have to analyze an answer choice not for why it could be right, but for why it's actually wrong. Each correct answer on the ACT reading section will be completely flawless. There will be 0 mistakes or 0 inconsistencies with the correct answer. But the ACT is really good at putting in answer choices that are completely correct except for one minor little flaw. And that one minor flaw makes that answer choice entirely wrong. Students who are used to defending their thesis in an English paper, or they're used to arguing for something, will defend why that wrong answer choice is actually correct, and they'll end up picking the wrong answer because of it. So instead, we want to approach each question by arguing against each answer choice one by one. If we find a firm reason why even just one little part at the end of an answer choice is incorrect, then that entire answer choice is wrong, and we mark it off and we move on to the next answer choice. This method reduces the risk of us falling for those trap incorrect answer choices, and it also reduces the amount of time that we spend debating with ourselves about the right answer. So the next time you take a practice test, or especially with the real test, instead of arguing for an answer choice, really take a critical approach to looking at each answer choice and start by crossing off answer choices. All right, so secret number 4 here. This is a quick one that answers a question that I get all the time from parents who are signing their kids up for the ACT. This secret is that you should absolutely not sign up to take the optional ACT writing section. Literally no colleges have looked at the scores from this optional ACT writing section in the past few years, with just one exception, and that's West Point. This can cause a lot of confusion if you're unfamiliar with the college process, but colleges will actually only look at the common application essay that you submit to them and the writing supplements that that college specifically will ask for when you're submitting your college application to that school. So they have no reason to look at an essay score where somebody else has graded that essay and just put it on a scale that's more subjective. The colleges just want to actually read your essays themselves, so that's why they just look at the essays that you personally submit. It's because of this that the SAT actually doesn't even offer a writing section anymore, but the ACT still keeps it around just for the suckers who want to pay that extra $25 to sign up for it. So the takeaway here is that unless you're applying to West Point, who for some reason still looks at this, basically just avoid this writing section entirely, save your $25 and save that extra hour at the end of the test when you really just want to go home and be done with the ACT. And for our final secret here, secret number 5, this one applies to the science section. A lot of people have been asking me about this science section recently, and it's because I think a lot of people are switching over from the SAT to the ACT after that first digital test, and the SAT takers are unfamiliar with the science section. But the secret here is that there's actually very minimal science knowledge that's required to do well on this science test. Instead, the ACT science section is almost entirely about data interpretation and study design. So basically, the most important skills that you need to have for the science section are just reading a question very closely and understanding what the question is asking, and then finding and interpreting data from a graph, a data table, or a chart. So your physics knowledge, your biology knowledge, and your chemistry knowledge will maybe be a little bit helpful for understanding context, but for the most part, these things can just be tossed out the window when we're taking the ACT science section. So really, you shouldn't be too worried if you're not that great at your high school science class. The overwhelming majority of your time here should be spent on practicing your interpretation of graphs, tables, and charts, and you don't need to worry at all about reviewing your old high school science notes. So if you're unfamiliar with the ACT science section, you should absolutely not be scared off just because you don't think you're a math or science person. I've seen a lot of students who struggle heavily in their high school science classes do very well and even get perfect 36s on this ACT science section. Okay, so now you have your 5 secrets and strategies that can help you better prepare and better understand the ACT. To recap, first off, the ACT is a test of recognition and practice. Second, All questions count the exact same. Third, we need to make sure we're arguing against answer choices instead of for answer choices on the reading section. Fourth, don't sign up for the optional writing section. And fifth, don't be fooled into thinking you need to be a science expert in order to do well in the science section. If you found any of these secrets helpful, let me know which one in the comment section below. And if you're looking for more expert help on the ACT, check out the link in the description and you can apply to work with me directly.